What, exactly, should we leave to our children? I want to tell you what a real family inheritance is. The kind of legacy that can outlive time, protect your children for life, and even continue to benefit your grandchildren. When you strip away money and privilege, what remains is the only thing that can truly protect a child for a lifetime. The first appreciating asset I want to leave my children is this: a vaccine against hardship. Modern parents are terrified of letting their children suffer. A child falls down, and they rush to pick him up. A child wants something and does not get it, and they immediately try to make up for it. Parents today are trying to raise their children inside a sterile glass box. But that goes against the laws of life. A child who grows up in a sterile environment develops a weak immune system. The moment he steps out into the real world, even a small virus can knock him down. Psychological immunity works the same way. If you never let a child experience failure, rejection, or lack, then you rob that child of the chance to build emotional antibodies. You may think you are protecting him, but in reality, you are weakening him. I have been hit hard many times in life. At 30, I went through a divorce and had almost nothing. Later, I suffered the devastating loss of a child. I also faced serious health problems and lost an eye. And in my investing life, I went through dark periods when a huge portion of my assets disappeared. But none of those hardships destroyed me. They made me stronger. Why? Because I learned early that life is difficult. I never expected life to be gentle with me, so I was always prepared to take a hit. That is what I want to leave my children, the ability to take a blow without collapsing. So when my child faces setbacks at school, I do not rush in to fix everything. I tell him, "Good, this is your vaccination." When my child feels upset because he cannot afford something he wants, I do not immediately reach for my wallet. I tell him, "Good." This feeling of not having enough may become the fuel that drives you. Children need to understand that failure is not the end. It is part of learning. Rejection is not shameful. It is normal. Only a tree that has lived through storms can grow deep roots. That kind of resilience is worth more than any trust fund. Money can be spent, but the ability to rebuild your life from ruins never disappears. The second appreciating asset I want to leave my children is this: a lattice work of thought. By that, I mean a mental framework that allows them to think independently, judge rationally, and make wise decisions. It is the kind of inner structure that helps them navigate a complicated world without losing themselves. I often tell my children this: the most intelligent people I have known were rarely the ones with the highest test scores. They were the ones who knew how to think. The most valuable thing I can give my children is not my stocks. It is the books in my study, the habit of learning, and the discipline of thinking. I want them to become lifelong learners. In a world that changes this fast, no specific skill can guarantee you a lifetime of security. The skills of a carriage driver became useless. The skills of a programmer may one day become outdated too. What lasts is not a single technical skill. What lasts is the logic underneath. You need to teach a child how to use mathematics to think about probability, how to use psychology to understand human behavior, and how to use history to see patterns before other people do. That is what I mean by a broad lattice work of mental models. While other parents are pushing their children to memorize more words and do more drills, I would rather discuss different questions at the dinner table. Why did that company collapse? Was it greed or was it stupidity? Why did that person get scammed? Was it because he lacked common sense or because he wanted a shortcut? Every headline, every business failure, every public scandal can become a lesson in thinking. What I want to teach my children is not just what answer to reach. I want to teach them how to find the answer. People love to say, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But very few people actually live by it. For a middle-class family, this may be your greatest advantage. You may not have hundreds of millions to pass down, but you may have education, judgment, discipline, and values. Pass those on. Teach your children the power of compounding, so they understand patience. Teach them the value of delayed gratification, so they learn self-control. Teach them the strength of honesty, so they build real trust. Teach them the wisdom of simplicity, so they can stay clear-headed in a noisy world. These things are invisible. You cannot touch them, and you cannot put them in a bank account. But when your child is 30 and facing a career decision, when your child is 40 and walking through a midlife crisis, when your child is 50 and staring at a dangerous temptation, those invisible lessons will function like a lighthouse. They will help him choose well, even if you leave your children no money at all. If they possess a strong mental operating system, they can still build a good life, perhaps an even better life than yours. A vaccine against hardship gives them the courage to survive. A latticework of thought gives them the capacity to rise. That, to me, is the real family inheritance. It requires no estate tax, no lawyers, and no notary. It does not tear siblings apart. In fact, it grows more valuable with time. And finally, I want to talk about the deepest meaning of being a parent. When we leave this world, what kind of figure do we want to leave behind in our children's memory? We have talked about many things, about what to give and what not to give. Do not give them oversized wealth. Do not give them a sense of entitlement. Do not burden them with the expectation of perfection. Give them a vaccine against hardship. Give them a framework for thought. But in the end, the deepest truth is even simpler than that. The greatest inheritance you can leave your child is not the number in your bank account. It is not even the advice that comes out of your mouth. It is you. It is how you live your life, how you face difficulty, how you treat other people, how you manage your desires, and how you carry yourself when life does not go your way. Children are the sharpest observers in the world. They do not do what you tell them. They do what they see you do. If you are anxious all day, terrified of being left behind by your peers, how can you teach your child to be inwardly strong? If you spend every dinner complaining about society, cursing your boss, and resenting the world, how can you teach your child to love life? If you will do anything for money, never read a book, and spend every free moment scrolling on your phone, how can you teach your child to keep learning and to live with principles? You cannot, because your example speaks louder than your words ever will. I have seen many middle-class parents trapped in a kind of self-congratulatory sacrifice. They save every penny. They give up their hobbies. They abandon their own dreams. They pour every resource into their children. And then they say, "I gave up everything for you, so you must succeed." That is a terrifying burden to place on a child. It does not just create pressure. It teaches the child that life is misery, that adulthood is about sacrifice, and that living means carrying other people's disappointment. How can a child raised that way grow up feeling hopeful about the future? I had 8 children, but I never believed that loving my children meant abandoning my own life. I loved investing. I loved reading. I loved architecture and design. I spent my days doing things that genuinely interested me. I lived with curiosity. I lived with energy, and even in my hardest years, I tried to remain dignified and optimistic. I wanted my children to see that life, although difficult, is still interesting, still meaningful, and still worth living. I wanted them to see how an adult solves problems through reason, how an adult earns dignity through honest work, and how an adult keeps going without becoming bitter. That kind of example sinks into the bone. Some of my children became lawyers. Some became scientists. Some went into business. What matters most to me is not their titles. It is that they are decent, hardworking people who genuinely care about their lives. To me, that is success. I did not leave them a mountain of gold, but I gave them a model of a father, a living example, imperfect but real, a man who never stopped trying to pursue wisdom and truth. So if you truly love your children, start by loving your own life well. Do not spend all your strength on your children alone. Save some of it to build a life worth showing them. Read, exercise, build strong friendships, go after the dreams you once abandoned. When you become a source of light, your children will naturally move toward the light. When you become a mountain, your children will naturally want to climb higher. Do not spend your life trying to pave every road for your children. The road is theirs to walk. Your task is different. Stand high enough, see far enough, live well enough, so that when they are lost in the forest, all they need to do is look up once and see that you are still there, steady, calm, and wise. And in that moment, they will know which way to go. That is what inheritance really means.